Welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at how to be a full stack developer. I've divided the video into three parts. That is the basics, intermediate, and advanced. So first we'll go through what full stack considers of, then we'll look into the basics, intermediate, and advanced. So full stack consists of front end, back end, and database layers. So if you want to be a full stack developer, you should be good at all these three things, right? If you intend to become one of the three developers, that is front end developer specific or back end developer specific or database developer specific, then you must be really good at that particular area uh, that is expected out of you if you choose to be a area specific developer. But if you want to be a full stack developer, you should be at least be good at all these, and you should be knowing the entire landscape. So this video is exactly about that, to discuss the landscape of full stack developer. So we'll go through the basics first, the things that you need to know in front end, back end, and database that will say if you're a newbie, if you're a absolute fresher into the industry, you should be knowing. Employers will be testing you on this to give you a chance in their company, initial chance. But if you're experienced, then you should be at least be good enough with intermediate features and advanced features. But let's go through the basics first. So in the front end, you should know HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. All vanilla, no frameworks. You should be knowing all the HTML5 tags, CSS3, major CSS3 features, and JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. Then we should be looking at backend basics. So in the backend, you should know at least Node.js. If not Node.js, then something like Python or something like Java. But at least you should know Node.js, right? If nothing, then Node.js. You should know REST, how REST works, or REST protocol. You should know HTTP protocol that is basically used in majority of the API calls or to the backend. Then you should know a framework like Express.js, which is widely used in the Node.js community. Then going into the database basic, you should know two types of database at least. One is SQL and one is NoSQL. At least you should know SQL or the language SQL, and you should know what MongoDB or NoSQL DB like MongoDB provides, right? So let's look at that. Next, let's look at front-end intermediate level skills that you must have. Then you must have, after you completed HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you must go with one of the frameworks in front-end. I would suggest React.js. Then you should know Redux. Redux is a data management on front-end tool, and you should be knowing that. Although there are tools like context API and all those things which provide similar functionality, but Redux is very extensive and provides all that you can do on front end with data. So you should know Redux for intermediate. You should know Bootstrap because it helps you build applications very quickly with basic CSS. You should know, start learning TypeScript at this point. So basically, these are all the intermediate features, are all the things that you must know to be able to call yourself a developer, get your second job, or things like that. Backend intermediate, right? You should know HTTP and HTTP2 protocols. You should know GraphQL, how to implement GraphQL. You should know Git, how to make use of Git for version management of your application between developers, between your team. You should know how to deploy. A basic deployment would also do, but you should know how to deploy your app in such a way that it is available to the world. So this is backend intermediate. You should know database. On the database side, you should know ORMs and ODMs, that is Object Relationship Manager, or object document managers like Sequelize and Mongoose. You should also know a new kind of a third kind of a database which falls under falls under the NoSQL category, but Redis is a database like Redis, which is used for caching, which is used for uh, very quick tasks that generally SQL and NoSQL database like MongoDB and MySQL or PostgreSQL is very provides a high latency, uh, while Redis would provide very low latency. So for some use cases, Redis is great, especially for caching. So you should be knowing a database like Redis. Then let's look at the advanced features that you should know if you want to be really good at it. If you're like a couple of years into the industry, and you should be uh, called as a senior developer or something like that. So you should know on the front end side, you should know Tailwind CSS, you should know style components, you should know SCSS, you should know Next.js. Next.js is a variant of React.js where server-side rendering happens. So you should know how to server-side render. Even in React.js, you should know how to server-side render things. SCSS is something like it's an extended version of CSS. You should be good with unit testing. You should know how to do end-to-end testing with tools like Cypress. Uh, so these are all the mostly the first three things are CSS frameworks, different types of CSS implementation, while the last three are other areas of development, right? So this is front end advanced. Then on the back end advanced, you should have started using cloud services and should know quite a lot of cloud services like S3 and EC2 and ECS. You should be able to make use of network protocols other than HTTP and HTTP2, which are TCP and UDP. You should know how they work. You should know WebSockets and all the technologies that implement TCP and UDP. You should know VPC because that becomes a big part of a big project. You must have VPC, and that's where you should know how to implement VPC and make use of it. You should know CI/CD because at this point you are required to push a lot of code automatically, do a lot of automated tasks before anything is deployed. You should know microservices, which is an architecture frame that divides your monolith into smaller pieces, and that is really good for scaling up applications. When you have millions of users, you cannot go ahead with monolith architecture. You must have microservices. You shouldn't be able to use serverless. You should be aware of serverless services and how to use them. You should have used things like Lambda or API gateways and even load balancers and all those things in a serverless way, because a lot of services are being provided today in serverless manner by the cloud providers. So you should be knowing all this. On the database side, you should know indexing. You should know indexing of all the which fields or which column should be indexed, and what is the cost of it. In which cases it's great to index, which cases you should not index. You should know transactions, when to perform transactions, how to perform transactions. You should know batch processing, how to do that effectively. And you should know caching, and you should know very different kind of databases like DynamoDB. You should know DynamoDB and CouchDB and all the different types of database which are used in specific instances, not widely used, but for some use cases it is the only option then, right? So this is all that you need to know. So going from the basics, you should spend a year or two on each of these technologies and keep moving towards advanced features onto front end, back end, and database side. That's all for today's video. Hit like and subscribe.